Welcome traders. So if like me, you're a big fan, if it isn't just a hobby, but it's also a job, this is a way in which we earn our income. If you're a big fan of trading the financial markets, engaging in the financial markets. So I usually do a weekly analysis, and I've always on my list of things to do have other videos that I want to film. I don't always get the time to do that because I'm relatively busy during the week. But today I really wanted to make the effort to tell you, to introduce you to ProRealTime as a platform. So ProRealTime is a broker independent platform for traders, and I want to give you a bit of an introduction to that. Okay, so basically to give you some background behind my sort of journey when I was getting started. This is late 2000, the first sort of decade, 2008, 2009, 2010. Back then, there really weren't any cheap sort of accessible platforms that were available for people to use that were reliable as well. So back then you shelled out quite a bit of cash. I mean, I think it was a minimum of £150 a month, upwards to £300-400 a month, just to kind of get yourself into onto a platform, a charting platform that you could use for trading. The data was reliable, the quality was there, was fantastic. So I was first introduced, and back then, by the way, brokerages did not provide charting data as well. So you would have access to an account. I think ETX Capital at the time was one of the ones that did do that, but not everybody necessarily did that. And MT4, MT5 didn't exist. MT4 was sort of there. It was very sort of low end. So it's quite interesting because in the film industry, they had a very similar parallel. They had sort of 3D Studio coming from the ground up, Lightwave 3D Studio, and on the high end, they had Softimage, they had XSI, they had Maya, which has now become the predominant animation platform. But it was interesting. They sort of had a very high-end platforms that cost a lot of money, and then the low end, there was kind of street level stuff that most people on the high-end institutions were ignoring. So I want to talk a little bit today about the institutional level platforms and why I love this particular platform so much. I'm a big user of MT4, I'm a big user of MT5. Those platforms are fantastic, but I just want to explain where this sort of comes from. So first of all, when I got started, I was kind of paying for a license, so to speak, of eSignal. So this just gives you a little bit of exposure to eSignal if we just sort of go through this. Very, very nice platform. I found I loved it. They updated it from version 11 to 12 and rewrote it from the ground up. It's become very, very big. It's got so many features inside it, feature rich. You're very, as a simple retail trader, if you're trading price action, you're very not likely to use or unlikely to use a lot of the features. However, at the same time, the next level up, a big name, was CQG. So CQG is what some institutions were using as well. So CQG data as well. These are just quite interesting to me. CQG was also using very accurate data. And so my mentor at the time, who was trading for institutions, was using that. Then also one of my favorite sort of traders was using TradeStation. So TradeStation at the same time is in a way also a broker. They've recently, I think, sold off their, if I understand it correctly, sold off their Forex section. They sold that off through to OANDA. So there's a lot of different sort of products swimming around, but TradeStation is one of these platforms. Also been around for a while, very proven technologies, also coming up the ranks, especially with regards to coding and programming as well, with regards to algos, is NinjaTrader. It's an interesting name because the name itself doesn't really seem, you might not associate that with very sort of conservative, professional, sort of institutional platform sort of trading, but that's exactly what it is. NinjaTrader has a phenomenal reputation as well. Very accurate. So for me, so this is my kind of personal just feedback on all of those. The one that I spend the most time with, I know TradeStation, I know NinjaTrader, I know CQG a little bit, the least amount, used eSignal predominantly, and then discovered ProRealTime. So because of my background in the film industry, I'm always looking to find out a little bit more about which are the platforms that kind of the most serious traders use. And this is aside from MetaTrader 4 and MetaTrader 5. And the one that eventually sort of floated across that came in front of me that some of my colleagues who had switched away from TradeStation were using was ProRealTime. And I started using it and instantly fell in love with ProRealTime. Is the closest to eSignal. I find it incredibly intuitive, very easy to use, and version 12 has come out now. And I really wanted to talk about a couple of features. I could talk forever about all the features, but certainly there's one or two features that I really think are worthwhile sharing with you. Sorry about the big prologue. I'll try and keep this short. So I'm really just want to talk about a couple of these features. I will leave the link for this in the description below, but I wanted to give you a sense of like what is the level at which pedigree of kind of racehorse kind of platforms that we're talking about here, so you understand the degree of which. But there's a whole lot of major new features. The responsiveness from the team in terms of feedback as to what features you would like us to put into the platform has been incredible. You get assigned a person who kind of is responsible for you and your accounts, and you sort of deal with that. So here's the good news. First of all, there's a free version available. It has end of day data only. It's free version, so you could use it for your analysis. What I love about that is you have access to multiple markets. So if you want to not just consider looking at currencies, but you want to look at commodities, or you want to look at equities, this is really a great way to go about doing that. Again, I'll provide a link in that for you below if you just want to explore it. It's free. So the next thing up is, of course, a subscribe version. And so some of the features that are available I want to talk to you about here. So they've added in a few, but for me, there's a couple such as the calculated instruments, which is the first and main one that I really want to talk about. If I don't even talk about anything else, this is the coolest thing ever. So what happened for me was that I was constantly thinking, well, I'd love if I had the ability to put a basket of instruments that I am following into and create an index from that. So in other words, just in the same way that the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ is an index made up from constituent equities, and an ETF is also an index made up of whatever it is, whether it's tech stocks or whether it's for example, new green stocks or anything, green growth, if we're looking at that. I found that the ability for you to be able to create calculated instruments is absolutely incredible. And so this is one of the first and most powerful tools. So there's a couple of reasons why you would use this. One, you would create your own personal portfolio of stocks that you are looking to follow, and you could create an index from that. The next reason you might use it is because you are wanting to compare the performance of maybe a certain series of instruments against other things. So you might want to compare precious metals such as gold and silver against maybe the performance of crude oil as an investment opportunity. So you have that ability to mix and match. You could say, okay, well, what if I had actually taken a position on certain currencies against the dollar, if I had done that? So you can construct your own indices. That is phenomenally powerful, and as far as I know, it is the only place where you can find this feature, and it's intuitive. So this is just mind-blowing, actually. So just for the purposes of sort of demonstrating this first feature, which I love so much, I'm going to go through to the ability to create a calculated instrument. So calculated instrument allows me to create an index, and if I want to create a fresh one, so let's just say that I want to see how the euro pairs, for example, have performed as a whole. So if I want an index, because as a trader, if you want to trade any of the euro crosses during the day, it's nice to know, is the euro bullish or bearish? Is it all over the place? You know, that kind of thing. And actually, maybe just to mix it up a little bit, I'm gonna make it Australian dollar, just to make it something different. So I've got the option between spread creation, index creation. I'm going to quickly show you this. This is very cool. If you don't find this interesting, man, I just can't help you here. So I'm going to go through and have a look. I want to see the Aussie dollar, so I'm going to add that in. I'm then going to add in, let's just say, for example, what are the other pairs? Aussie CAD, Aussie Yen. It doesn't really matter so much. It's going to give me a sense of what these are, and I can add as many of these as I wish to do. So we've got that Aussie CAD, we've got Aussie Yen, let's say Aussie CAD if we're going to do that, and we've got Aussie Kiwi as well. We're missing Aussie Kiwi, so let's just chuck that in as well. And so creating these instruments would actually help with a trader when they're looking to do their weekly analysis and they want to do it. So once I've got all those, you've got different ways in which you can, some of the instruments, volumes, capitalizations, using a formula that you give them. I'm just going to use the default settings, which is not to say it's the best, but I'm just going to use that because I want to illustrate to you what happens. So then I'm created, I have a series here where I can now look at this. So now when I look at the actual index here, this is my own effective Australian dollar index. What do I see from this? Well, the very first thing I see on the daily is we've broken through a major level of support. We are in a downtrend. We are retracing back up into an area. And therefore, immediately I know as a swing trader or as a trader, there's probably the most likely outcome here is that we're going to see price encounter resistance and then resume its downtrend. So that can go onto my watch list. That means that over the coming days, I can actually start looking for shorting opportunities on the Australian dollar. So very, very cool. Now let's take this somewhere where it's a lot more useful. So imagine here that I want to, right now, what's been in the news a lot, there's Twitter, obviously Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter and how that's potentially impacted Tesla. So there's a lot of people, obviously fanboys, that are defending Tesla, saying, look, that it's still undervalued and that it's outperformed everything else when it's kind of clearly has given back. If we go have a look at it here, so what we're gonna do here is we'll sort of get a bit of a look back at that. So if we look at Tesla here, I can see, especially if I bring up some of the measurements, if I bring up a Fibonacci, I've used the Fibonacci tool, and basically I've gone from 0 when the stock was worth nothing up to the all-time highs and brought it back, and you can see I've adjusted it manually, but it's almost at 71% from the high, so it's almost come back 71%. I have to say, as a general rule, that's not a good sign in any market where there's a correction beyond that point. It means that it's lost its bullishness. That's basically, if you go back as far as the 618, you can get very healthy trends that do a 61.8% retracement, and then they tend to recover. So the point of this really is not actually so much that. It's not really an attack on that. It's just that if I wanted to go and compare it, what would I do? And so, for example, if I've gone ahead and had a look at who are the competitors, we know that when Tesla at its highs was doing very well, it had overtaken most of the other leaders in that situation, which included Toyota, Volkswagen, the China one BYD, we've got Daimler, Chrysler Daimler, we've got BMW, Ford, so on and so forth. So what I want to do, let's just see very quickly how we would go ahead for, how we would compare the performance of that. So again, what I can do is go through to that tool. So let's bring up the tools with regards to calculated instruments. This is so much fun. It's over here on the right hand side, and then I can go ahead, I want to create a new one. So from that new one, again, index creation, and go ahead and start to create that. So what I want to do here is collect the other cars, the other performance of the other vehicle manufacturers. And of course, this is a general thing. I understand that Tesla is so much more than just a vehicle manufacturing company. They tend to have separated stuff, but I know that they're more of an energy and tech stock company as well. So this is really just more of an interesting, isn't that curious kind of activity to do this. So I can go through a variety of these, and what I've actually done is created at one of these already. So this one, what I've done, if I just go through and look at the constituents, I've obviously got Volkswagen, I've got Daimler, Chrysler, General Motors, Ford, BMW, I've got, what were the other ones on the list? The only one I didn't include was the China one, because effectively it was more tricky to get that data from a different exchange, but I've included pretty much everything here except for the BYD. So if we go ahead and have a look at that index, so if I go and select it, this brings it up, and so here I can see the performance, the general performance of most of those car companies and how they've performed recently, but not against Tesla per se. One of the things I would highlight here, if we have a look at it from a much sort of longer period of time, it's kind of halfway back from the highs, ping-ponging between the two. But of course, remember, it's going to be an average of all these different companies from all around the world. And then what I'm going to do is just overlay the instruments in it. So I'm going to go into the weekly chart. I'm going to go in here, I'm going to add in, I want to compare that instrument. So over here, I'm going to go in and compare to instrument and just bring in, and I realized that I'm busy talking about how this is such a cool platform for the average trader, and that I'm immediately showing a very advanced feature. But the fact of the matter is that once you sort of become more consistent in your trading, you do start to go, okay, what next? What can I look at next? And the next thing you can do is start to build up a portfolio for your own personal investment. So here we go, include Tesla in that, and here we can see how it looks to the downside there. So I can thicken it up if I want to compare it. And in principle, depends on how you want to argue it, but what we can see from this, if I bring this in, is we can see principally just that the trend is very different. So that's something that I wanted to highlight here. Just wanted to highlight that that trend is very, very different. If we compare the two, you can see here, let's just do it there. What we can see the difference is between price action in the background is not trending down as heavily. Relatively speaking, Tesla is tanking much more aggressively. And this is actually something that even shows up differently. If we go over here, let's compare to instrument here and bring in Tesla on this chart, you can see kind of the difference there on the daily perspectives in terms of that. That just really shows that the angle of momentum is a lot more bearish. And so we could dig further into that to really kind of discover it, but it definitely says it's undeniable that the company stock is definitely nosediving and is not really necessarily representing a nice buy opportunity there. Of course, you do also have to compare it to, say, the leader in terms of tech stocks that's busy dropping at the moment, which is Amazon. So this, again, it's a little bit more complex than that. But the argument that, oh, well, it's undervalued and it's still performing well against all the other car companies is simply just not true. The fact of the matter is that if the company was really that magical, it should be weathering the storms better, not worse than everything else. That's just your first clue that things are not really that great. Anyway, so I really, really like this feature. I wanted to show you this. What I'm going to do now is just show you one or two of the other features that I really enjoy about it. But just the general user face as well. If we just go through to this, I can easily change layout. So here I've got a day trading layout that I can jump between. between. So this allows me to change different time frames. I can control how many candles in each time frame. Obviously, I can add all the different indicators. I can create my own indicators, create my own tools and add those in, and you can kind of switch them on and off. Again, it's very intuitive. You can clean up the space if you need it to be that. You can have different watch lists. So I have a week ahead watch list that if I go through that, obviously I can jump between those. If I want to have a look at what are Warren Buffett's favorites that I've created, I've gone through that. I can then work my way through those if I wanted to do that. I've even got a scanner that I've kind of built up. So just a simple moving average scanner. You know, is this particular stock bullish? Is it above the 20 and 50 or the 50 and 20 in the correct order? So it's a scanner that allows me to then look for those trading opportunities. And again, you know, you can change the colors. Do you like a darker background? Do you lighter background? Do you want Heikin-Ashi candles? Do you want, you know, OHLC bars? Do you want normal traditional candlesticks? You can tweak and adjust all of those, and all the different trading, all the different tools are available here. So I'm just going to go back to that very first layout. This is, excuse me, where I tend to do my weekly layouts. Yeah, you've got some very nice little drawing tools when you are measuring out where your potential risk reward is. If you want to calculate, you know, where to put your stop loss, what's your entry going to be, you know, those kinds of things are adjustable after the fact. You know, all these different features and tools. I find it just so incredibly intuitive, all the different draw tools. And of course, you can create presets from it. The easiest thing in the world to go through, configure that area, and just create your own one. So I can go through, and if I have my own ones, which I have done here, so for example, Adam Peter Harris, 4-hour support resistance, so I can create my own custom bars. Easiest thing in the world to just generate those little features and just add them to the menu so they're there. You can obviously remove things that you don't use. So I've switched off all of these features because I don't use them, because I've created my own ones. So I love this platform because it's so easy to use. There's hotkeys, so on to keep it clean. I've got scanners. It's colorful. I can change the colors. There's preset colors if you want. You can go with light and dark, mix things up. And of course, you've got access to a variety of different markets. When I look through this, if I want to go through and see, well, what's going on in industrials or basic materials, I could jump across to that. And then, of course, I've got links to those, and I can see which exchange they're on. I can expand all the different choices of what I'd like to see in terms of that data, and then jump between the different things. So, and that's really good. I've also got, for example, if I have my own stock portfolio, which I've been waiting for this index feature forever. So now I have it. I can go ahead and create it. So I go through high dividend stocks and then start to work my way through. So I've created my own watch list of different items that I want to understand how well they would perform as well if I was to put money into those. So it's just such a great platform. And as I said, it's broker independent. For me, it's largely used for analysis purposes, for technical analyses on everything from commodities, stocks, to you know, currencies, cryptocurrencies as well, all included in here. And this is usually where I do my weekly analysis. So most of you have seen those videos, and I realize this video is a little bit longer than I intended, but I wanted to give you a very brief introduction into it. But highlight version 12 is out. I really enjoy it. If you want to find out more about it, I'll just put the link in the description here, and you can go ahead and explore it. And as I said, it's really for people who love the charting platforms. And this, you know, mine is very chart heavy based because that's where most of my decisions you know, take place. But there's preset layouts that you can do. So there would, be, for example, be a default workspace which you could go to. And here you can see the other features that are available. So there are different scanners, different tools that are more volume-based, for example. And so you would have a layout that might feel based more of fundamental analysis than just technical analysis. But all the features are there, and I absolutely love it. And I think anyone who's very serious about a platform would absolutely want to try this out and have a go at it. There we go. I'll leave with that. And absolutely, I'm doing this before New Year's, so wishing all of you a fantastic 2023. Have a great holiday. You shouldn't be working now. I am, because this is a hobby as well as a job for me. So